everybody, and welcome to Life as I See It with your hostess, Dina Nierenberg. And tonight with me, I have my friend Sarah Stark. How are you doing?
So good to be here, Dina.
It's a long time coming, that's for sure. Sarah is an ADD specialist, and we're going to be discussing that tonight and everything really that goes into that. You know, first of all, tell me what got you into this?
So I had a private practice, which I still do, teaching children how to read. And I noticed that I very much enjoyed teaching the boys, especially the boys who couldn't focus. I found them interesting, engaging. Like when I was teaching the girls and I would say, open up the book to page 144, and they would open it, I would say, what are you doing? And they would be like, didn't you just tell me to open the book to page 144? Yeah, but I didn't expect you to listen. So it was such a difference, you know? Yeah. So I found that I developed specific methods that were working for these children. And I was enjoying myself because they were original, they were creative. And I'm going to explain that's their part of the brain that's active. They were emotional, they were not dry, they had terrific senses of humor. And I became known as the one who teaches the unteachables. And I developed a reputation as knowing how to deal with
the unteachables.
The unteachables, meaning that they had been to other people before but hadn't learned how to read. And also the fact that these kids were so behavioral. But the bottom line is, and that's why I'm here, and thank you, Dina, to understand the structure of their brain and you cater to it, then you can fulfill my mantra, which is every single person in the world can learn how to read. You have to find the key. That's your job, not their job. So you have to get very creative and use whatever they're giving you to teach them how to read. So I've taught kids how to read through Lego. I've taught kids how to read. There was one guy, he was a DJ. He was 21, 22.
Wow.
I taught him how to read through music. I developed a whole system on the piano. Another kid, whatever it is that they love, you access that, you teach them how to read.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. I think that there's this book that's called You Cannot Teach a Fish How to Climb a Tree.
Yes.
Right? That's what I'm thinking about when you say
based on
that.
the poem.
Right,
Yes.
based off the poem. And it's so true. I mean, how can you get a kid who has a very hard time focusing and they have even a hard time sitting? How can you teach them how to read in the way that, you know, people have been teaching kids for hundreds of years? I really do get that. Oh, believe me, I get that. Because I was one of those preschoolers and first graders. I couldn't do anything really. I couldn't color in the lines. And I was always getting into trouble for that because I color like this and I loved it so much, but I got into a lot of trouble for that. It took me forever and a day to learn how to read. Also, I had to have my IQ tested because of that, because they thought I was, you know, whatever the word was back then. I'm not going to say it now. But we're talking the 70s. They thought I was that. And so when it came out in my IQ test that I was way above that, people were like, well, why can't she read? What's the matter? You know?
So if you don't mind, I'm going to get on my high horse a little bit because I love explaining this.
Oh, please do.
Okay.
Please do.
So there's a right brain and a left brain having nothing to do with whether you're right-handed or left-handed. It has to do with brain function. So you're super right brain, Dina. You're talented, you're dynamic, you're intuitive, you know, like you have a nose for the right people, right? You don't do the, I'll go online and check her out.
And I'm alive to hear all this.
There you go. So the right brain, in its function, is very language-oriented, music-oriented, intuitive. People who are strong in the right brain, they write, they act.
That's me.
Yes.
That's me.
So it's nice to meet you, Dina.
Yes, it's nice to meet you too.
So people in the left brain, Dina and I know each other for a while, so it's a joke. The left brain people are very, very linear, organized. They live by executive function, something that right brain people never even heard of and dread. Executive function is the secretary of the brain. So if your teacher says, you have a book report and it's due in 2 weeks. Those people who are strong in executive function will say, 2 weeks, which means I have to do 20 minutes each night. The right brain people will leave it to the last night, stay up all night, finish the report and say, I did it. It wasn't easy, but I did it, right?
Yeah.
Why would they, think about Pesach. Think about Pesach and making it if you're left brained, right? And you've got everything mapped out on your calendar with a date by which the bedroom has to be finished and the sperm have to be checked. That's a very left brain way of making Pesach. Right brained is you sit down, you're cleaning your room, you discover the diaries from when you were 8.
Oh my
you
God.
get totally lost in it.
For real.
And 6 hours later, your husband comes home and says, what's for supper? And you're like,
You're storing your diary.
supper? I just wrote an entire play in my head based on the diaries that I found in my closet. Why are you talking about supper? Because it's 6:30 and I'm hungry? That's a left brain skill. Okay,
Sure.
so I just gave a very short overview, but okay. So let me give you an example of this. I had a client who was ADD, and it was a very big mention. He decided he's going to come to me. He wants to work with his ADD. He had a company. He was making a lot of money, and he was a good businessman, father of 5, and I usually would say to him, I am not getting involved in issues with you and your wife. That's not my job. I'm your coach, whatever. But one thing I showed him how to do. So he said that his wife used to call, and he would say, I told you can't call me now. I'm busy. I can't speak to you now. Why are you calling me? And that would get her anxious, and she would keep calling over and over because she needed to be secure that he loved her. So he told me this example, and I said, listen, here's what you're not doing. You're not bringing in your left brain. All she's getting is a lot of talk and a lot of emotion around it. I told you not to call. I told you I'm busy. If you want to give her an integrated response, let's bring in the left brain. And by then he knew what I meant. So he said, okay. So he started like this. I would love to talk to you now. Good start. That's right brain talk. But I have a problem. That's great. Problem is a left brain word, right?
Yes.
Okay. By the way, I have lists of right-brained words and left-brained words.
Oh, that's so cool. I'd love to hear them.
Yeah, and when I tell the client to bring in the left brain, they know what I'm talking about.
Right.
They're linear words, mathematic words, executive function words, organizational words, the words we don't like using. Anyway,
Right. Yeah.
So I said to him, so bring in your left brain. So he said, let's see. I already said I have a problem. I can call you back at 2:15. Will that work?
Oh.
I said, bingo.
That's so
Okay.
great.
Okay.
That's
Calls me
Wow.
back 2 weeks later. He says, Mrs. Stark, now I have another problem. I said, what's the other problem? He said, my wife is falling in love with me all over again because I did exactly what you said. And I said, that's your problem.
Yeah, oh, that's
that
so-
ain't my
that's so
problem
sweet.
anymore.
Yeah.
But look what bringing in the left brain did. Look what an integrated response did where you're using both sides of the brain and
Wow.
accessing. And I'll explain where ADD comes in a minute, but I want you to continue with your questions.
Oh wow, yes, definitely. How does an adult know that they suffer from ADD or ADHD?
You're saying to differentiate between the two?
How does a person know that, like, could they say, like, oh my gosh, I think I have ADHD and really mean it? And not just like, I run around a lot, therefore I have it. How would a person actually know that they had it?
So first of all, I'm sorry, it's not a good answer, but people should not self-diagnose.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why. Because ADD can manifest as symptomatic ADD if you have trauma, traumatic brain injury, you're under stress even that day, you can look like an ADD person.
Okay.
Or let's say,
okay.
just for that day, which happened to me, your doctor gave you a medication and it wiped out your memory. Okay, so that's not ADD. However, as a coach, not a therapist, I'm not a social worker, I can treat symptomatic ADD or I could treat real ADD. So in the end, it doesn't matter. I'm not giving medication. I'm treating symptoms. And the main symptoms we see is the mismanagement of time, mood, and money. Time, obvious. Mood is emotional regulation. And very few people with ADD are able to manage their finances. You know, they'll always say to the woman, do me a favor, you manage the money because it just slips out of his hand. And I'll give you a perfect example, and it's such a nice example. They say about Rabbi Shlomo Kalbach, his concerts always started 2 hours later. He had no sense of time. You would be waiting there, and he was greeting everybody and giving them brachos and giving them hugs and whatever. And an hour and a half later, when you thought he was ready to start, he had some lovely things to say, and then the concert would start. Money, they say whatever he had in his pockets, by the end of the day, he had given it all out.
Oh, wow.
Whatever he earned from his concerts, when they paid him, he looked for poor people, homeless people, people who needed money, people who he had met at the concert who confided in him their troubles.
Wow.
Okay, I don't know about mood. He was so loving and warm. I'm assuming it was perfect. But, you know.
Oh, wow. You never know what goes on behind closed doors.
Right. But people who have ADD and ADHD are extremely right-brained. Extremely. So many of them are extremely talented, and a lot of the musicians that we have in our community were people who couldn't concentrate in school. Right. Lipa and Yossi Green collaborated on a song about how they got a lot of petch in Cheder because both of them couldn't concentrate.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, but
like that helps, right?
Right, but look what became of them.
Yeah.
They're, you know, and sometimes you'll look at mechanics and they'll tell you, you know, they did very poorly in school. There's this person that I do writing for that has a very, very popular organization. And he's always telling me that he was such a poor student. And I said to him, you know, you had an organization that has influence over the whole world. Could you imagine if you were good in school? You would have never done this. Because here you are putting heart, soul, and kishkas into this because you know you have to be very hands-on because you don't have the reading, and that's why I do his writing, the reading and the writing and whatever that other people will use.
Right.
You know that you have to put in all that special energy that these people have, that they could keep going and going and going, like the Energizer battery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I said to him, are you kidding? What a loss to the world if you would have been able to read and write.
Oh my God.
Yeah. You know?
That's so cool.
Yeah.
That's so cool. You know, I really had a very hard time with Hebrew classes. Very, very hard time. And I'm told that's a symptom of somebody who also they just have a very, very hard time using the left part of their brain. I don't know how that's a connection, but they say that it is. And Hebrew, I would just fail out of that time and time again from first grade through middle of 10th grade. And then I learned a very, very special technique that I'll tell you about. That's really pretty simple, actually. But it took me forever to learn anything Hebrew oriented. It took me forever to learn math, forever and a day. It took me forever to learn science. Those things I flunked out, 40s, 60s, 40s, 50. I brought home once to my parents a 33 in profits.
Oh my God.
Who brings home 33? But the lowest grade I ever got was 22. And finally in 10th grade, middle of 10th grade, I was just so down about those grades. I know that in certain things like history, I was getting hundreds. Literature, I was getting hundreds. Writing, I was getting hundreds. French, hundreds. There were things I was getting hundreds in. How could you be getting 22s in one thing and hundreds in another? And then I said, you know what? Even the things I'm getting 22s, 33s in, I'm going to study every single night if it kills me. I mean that. I know what I'm like, and I know that it's hard for me to sit for this stuff, but I'm going to do this anyway. And that's how I finally learned to at least get, if not great grades in math, science, and Hebrew courses, at least passing great. But it's very, very tough when you know that there's a girl who she spent last night studying, so today she got 100. And I spent the past month studying, and today I got a 72. Why and how? It used to make me so mad.
So based on what we've discussed, okay, this is my right brain, this is my left brain. Where do you think math and science belong?
I'm going with the left brain.
Good. Where do you think Hebrew reading belongs, being that you can't compensate with comprehension like you could do in English? Because in English,
Right brain again.
left brain is Hebrew.
Oh.
You see, it's
Left
just
brain.
a series
Right.
of dots and dashes, so to speak. And if you don't understand Hebrew, it's nonsense. And people who have ADD or extreme right-brained, they want meaning in everything. So when we talk about kids at risk, one of the commonalities that these children have, according to Rabbi Horowitz, is that they're learning disabled, but I found a different commonality. They have a lot of trouble with mitzvahs anashim milumada. Mitzvahs anashim milumada is rote skills. Rote skills are the things that we do that we don't even understand why, but they're part of our makeup as Jews. So you wake up in the morning. What's the first thing you do? You wash Negelwasser. But why? But why? You wake up in the morning. You go daven shachris. Daven shachris. I would rather be eating. You wake up in the morning. No, we don't eat before davening. You wake up in the morning. So davening is a left brain skill. Learning is a left brain skill. Gemara is a left brain skill. Shabbos. Most of the halachos of Shabbos we don't understand. They're just, we do what was done in the Mishkan. Left brain. And then we're shocked because these kids don't want to be from. Because it's hard for them.
It's hard.
Because so much of it is not where they would like it to be, which is here.
Right.
It's here.
It's there. It's the other side.
It's on the other side, and they're
so
not so into that side.
Oh.
So unless you can take halachos and Gemara and Mishnayos and davening and make it super creative,
it's got to be super creative. I mean, wow.
So there is a Rosh Yeshiva. His name is Rabbi Avi Wiesenfeld. He runs the yeshiva. I believe it's in Israel. It's called Beis David, and a lot of boys with ADD do very, very well there because he has it. And the only reason I'm comfortable saying it is he advertises it all over
Really,
the place.
that's right. That's what makes it all right.
Yes, and he does everything in a very creative way, so the boys love him.
Nice.
And he has some very good, very frum boys in his yeshiva.
So interesting. I come from a highly Orthodox family, and I always had an extremely hard time being Orthodox. So now, where am I at Orthodox-wise? I'm not like my family, but I'm not religious either. I would have to say I'm more like what we call a modern Orthodox, young Israel, and that seems to work for me. Certain basic things that I do, keep Shabbos, keep kosher, mikvah, and all that. And then there are just some little things that I just don't do because I'm just not getting it. I don't feel it.
There you go.
That's a thing.
Feeling
I feel it.
is right brains. You want to feel it. You don't want to
feel it. I don't
organize it.
Hard time for me
you
to
want
do
to
it by
feel
words.
it. Yes.
Yeah. So
yes.
I found a place religiously where I'm comfortable.
Yes, which is important.
Where I'm still giving tribute to my parents, and at the same time I'm giving tribute to me too. It's just everybody's benefiting.
Well, they're benefiting from having a mother and a wife and a daughter who's comfortable.
Sure.
As opposed to rebellious, or as opposed to, someone who's happy within herself brings so much mazel into her family.
It's true.
Yeah.
It took me a while to get there. When I first got married, I decided, okay, I'm going to be as religious as I'm expected to be. And I really tried. Lord knows, only Hashem knows how hard I tried to be really, 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 really religious. I really tried. I looked the part. I tried to talk the part. but I couldn't be that person. And
you were miserable.
I was the most miserable person in the world. Throughout my 20s, I'm like, why can't you just do this? Your friends can all do, your sisters-in-law, your sister, everybody can do this. Why can't you do this? And then I realized I was 28 years old. I'm like, how do you need it to be, Dina? That's what I said to myself. Dina, you do it how you need it to be, and then God will understand. Hashem will understand that you're doing what it is that you need to do in order so that you can keep on loving Him. Because I wasn't loving God before.
Well, how could you?
It was very, very hard to love God. This one, that God said, do this, do this. It's hard to love a God who says, do this and a million things. But once I was doing things that made sense to me, and I felt like I still had connection to my family, and I still had connection to God, it all came together, and I became the who I am today person.
That we know and love.
Oh, thank you.
Right, Karina. So I'll give you an example from my life. Because I'm so right-brained and talented and creative, I found cleaning my house difficult. And I it was like a little puzzling. Like, how do you get a house to become clean? But I found my own creative way of doing it. And I also watched my cleaning lady to see what her system was. But I didn't like it because it was a left brain system. So what would I do? I would go out and buy a CD, those days, CDs, that I loved. And I would look, let's say, at a song that I loved. And it would say 4.5 minutes. And I would think to myself, okay, what can I clean in 4.5 minutes? Not a whole bathroom, that doesn't make sense. But can I clean the toilet and the sink in 4.5 minutes and do the mirror with Windex? Yes, I can. And when the song ended, I stopped. That was the deal. And then I would pick another song and say, okay, I'm wiping out the bathtub. How long is this song? Because the bathroom was like, it was my worst job.
Yeah.
Right. So I found creative ways, or like, I'm a dancer and I teach dance. So I would clean for 20 minutes, give myself 10 minutes of dance or whatever. And with my clients who were ADD, who hated studying and would have rather not done any studying at all. So I taught them some of the ways I had taught myself to do the things I hated. And they got it. And I wouldn't give them my method. I would say, what works for you?
For you, right.
You want 10 minutes to play with the baby when you've studied for 20 minutes? That's fine. Or whatever it was. But what it did was it brought in the left brain because there were times attached even to the fun stuff. So there was a time attached to studying, but there was also a time frame attached to the fun. So they learned how to use their left brain.
Oh, wow. So they learned how to integrate the both.
That's it.
Okay.
Which we use the letter X. We demonstrate it with the letter X. I'm also a dance therapist, so this is the letter we use that indicates integration.
Integration between left
right
brain
and left.
And right.
And then you cross.
Wow.
And that's integrated.
I get that.
Yeah.
I get that. And it took me forever and a day to get that. It took me the first 15 years of my life to even start to get that. And that was only as far as schoolwork was concerned. And it's only because I hated being a disappointment. I hated disappointing. I was
there
like 22, 33, 45,
yes.
50,
the people
55.
pleasing aspects of this.
And it made me feel really badly about myself. Okay, I know that like she barely studies, but yet she got a 95, and I also barely studied, so why am I getting a 35? But so also her, she barely studies too. It's like I'm like, am I an idiot? What's the matter with me? It's
Yeah, I get exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, I'm sure that you hear that all the time. People asking themselves, "Am I an idiot?" Because you feel like one when doing well in certain subjects is so darn hard, and the teachers don't get it. The teachers do not get it.
But I remind people, treat these kids very well, because they're going to be the millionaires that come back and donate to your school, and they're not going to do it if you punish them too often.
That's true.
Treat them well.
It's so true.
Yes.
It's so true.
They're your alumni who are going to be the committee for your dinners. Right now it's rough, But when they come back with the money and you're sitting there with the safer because that's your strength and you need them.
You need them.
Treat them well now.
You'll need them one day.
You bet. I say this all the time to the Rebbes and the principals. You're going to need them
one day.
And these guys that drove you crazy, trust me, they're going to run hedge funds. So be careful.
So true. Wow.
You know, look at yourself, how dynamic you are.
Yeah, that's true. It's so, I don't mean to toot my own horn, but it is true. I never in a million years thought that I would become the person that I am today. I always thought, okay, there's Dina Bronstein. She has a hard time in school. She's going to have a hard time in life. I didn't realize that I can go from being somebody who has a hard time in school and focusing, paying attention, being also super, super wild at recess, to one day becoming a woman that I admire. I admire myself and my journey and how far I've come. Like the 6-year-old back then who couldn't read Hebrew, couldn't read English, couldn't do any kind of math. I just thought, this is me. I'm an idiot, you know, and just like my teachers make me feel like that. And now I'm like, hello, that was some difficulty you had back then, but it doesn't define you.
That's the word. It doesn't define you.
That's a big thing.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
It's a big thing.
I'm so grateful we had this conversation.
I'm so grateful that we had this conversation. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I didn't know that this conversation would have me in tears, but I guess it is very cathartic.
You know, I just have to share with you that, you know, I do evaluations and I don't, you know, I'm an educational person, so, but many times I suspect that the boy has ADD, and the dad is sitting there, and you could see he's about to cry, but he's holding himself back because he's a man, and I'm done with the, you know, the conference and the report, and we've gone through everything, and then he'll say to me, "What are you doing next week?" What question is that? And I say, "Why?" And he says, "I need to be evaluated by you. I think I have the same thing as my son has." And I'm like, well, you know, true ADD is not genetic, but, you know, they get it from somewhere, and it's also the modeling and the tendencies and whatever. I said, you don't need an evaluation, but, you know, if you want to talk, you want to come back and talk, we can do that. But that's what it is. We see ourselves, and when it comes out in our kids, it's so devastating.
Sure.
Because they're reflecting us, and we're thinking, oh my God, where did we go wrong? We didn't go wrong. It's just a certain way of processing what's in your brain. That's all it is. And when you get stuck in the right brain, which is all the creative and intuitive and wonderful things, so then you become hyper sensitive to light, to sound. You become hyperactive. Bingo. And
okay. Oh my gosh.
Because
now
the
it's
nervous
all coming
system,
together.
okay, because the nervous system is consistently sending out messages without the stop mechanism. So it's on go mode.
Go.
And I'm not going to discuss medications, but I will just tell you what is the function of ADD medication. It introduces the concept of stop, think, do. Because with the ADD kids, they never stop and they never think. They just do. You know? So you want to introduce hey, slow that down. Is that a good idea? Do you think that's a good idea? Yeah. Well, then think some more. Maybe that's not such a good idea.
Right.
So when somebody gets stuck in the left brain, just to show you what it's like and what it's like to live with a person like that, it's just as difficult to live with this ADD. And we're not discussing strategies now, which is what I do. So in the left brain, they'll become very critical, very punctilious. Excuse me, supper was served at 6. It is now 6:02 and I'm closing down the kitchen. You know, super organized, freak out if you put a dish towel back in the wrong place.
Right.
And super stressed all the time. Okay? So what we want, and the reason we want to understand this whole concept of neurodiverse, is we want these people all of them to find ways to become more integrated. They don't have to become fully integrated, but more integrated. And I tell my clients, when you're integrated, give yourselves a hug.
Loving it. I absolutely love that.
Thank
That
you.
is the perfect.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure. That is a perfect way to end the show. Love. Lots and lots and lots of love. Sarah, thank you so much for joining us today.
Pleasure.
This is Sarah Stark. She's an ADD specialist. And I am Dina Nierenberg, hostess of Life as I See It. See you all later. Love you.